Good evening to all my subscribers, new and old. I am absolutely blessed from all the messages and comments that I've had over the last sort of couple of weeks. Really, I've had a massive uptake in new people subscribing to the channel. So welcome to everybody. Welcome to Usually Fixing and Tinkering. My name is Andrew, and basically this is the channel that focuses on the nitty gritty stuff of modern classic car ownership and classic cars, because I am a classic car person at heart, and it's basically where I started from someone about 5 years ago who couldn't change a spark plug. I was always interested in cars and always have been, but actually getting my hands dirty and not paying my mechanic every 2 seconds there was a problem, that was a difficulty, and it's something that took me many years to overcome. In fact, I will say now, I've owned my Ford Focus Mark 1, my number one car, the star of this channel in some respects, even though Beatrix now is a pretty much a star of her own right these days. I've had that car for 10 years. And it took me quite a few years before I started getting my sockets and spanners, which were inherited from my grandfather on my dad's side, who basically taught me a few little things early on in my life. He was a tool maker. I come from a family of tool makers, so highly skilled sort of work. Even though I decided that that wasn't for me, I'm in a completely different profession. In fact, I'm in a profession that has absolutely no connections with what I do on this channel and my interest in cars, which I actually quite like, because if I worked, and I have had quite a few people come up to me, especially at the Pride of Longbridge, and say, "Are you sure you're not a professional?" I'm not. I'm not. I'm nowhere near a professional in some respects. Professionals work on 20, 30, 40 different types of makes of cars. I only specialise in two particular marques, and that is the Ford and Rover marquees. So really, my experience is quite limited to those two marquees. Unfortunately, I can't really tell you much about Vauxhalls, although I think they're rubbish. Fiats are very underrated. VWs are overrated, and quite frankly, Peugeots and French cars, certain Peugeot 205s are beautiful cars and fun. And there's quite a few Peugeot cars that have been like that down the years, and equally just mad and rubbish, just rubbish. And most French cars tend to be that way, unfortunately. Just not completely rubbish, just weird enough to just not be practicable or usable, really. And I'm quite sure there are people that disagree with me on that. That's my opinion. This is your opinion, and I like to just emphasise that on this channel, that I am a person of strong opinions as much as anything else. If you may have met me, you will have noticed that. So I am not a professional. I have learned everything that I've done by practice, experience, and getting things wrong 90% of the time and getting it right 10%. That's how it was at the start, when I started getting my hands dirty in 2017 using quite an old socket set on my granddad's, which was Japanese. The old metal cased 40-piece 40 tooth ratchets that you have to kind of turn about 90 degrees before the next click. Goodness me, I've upgraded a lot in the world. I now have Halford's advanced 100 click ratchets, and believe you me, they are amazing in comparison. I don't know how I coped, but that's how I started, and that's how everybody should start working on their cars. Basic tools. And that's something that I'll probably cover in another episode, about what you need to know about getting started on most cars between probably the 60s to about 2005. That is pretty much where I cut off. I have very little interest in cars beyond 2005. There are a few cars that I will dip my toes in. I have a very big soft spot for Mark III Focuses, an early one. It'd have to be an early one, because I passed my test in one. I learned to drive in one, and going from a Mark III Focus to a Mark 1 Focus, that was quite a change. And the Mark 1 Focus is definitely a much more childish drive, a much more fun go-karty feel, whereas the Mark III is a bit more grown up, a bit more hunkered down and controlled, but just not quite as fun. And that's the description most people will give you. Two fine cars, very fine cars. But the cut-off for me in terms of the amount of electrics, complexity, and quite frankly, unnecessary things like lane departure warnings, blind spot indicators on your mirrors. These things are just, driver's aids are just too much, way too much these days, and it is affecting people and the way they drive. It's just, no. I'm sorry, most young people, well, I'm 30, and most young people under my age, the way they drive really alarms me, and I think you need to shove them in a 1960s Morris Mini and see how they drive them, because believe you me, they will have to learn to concentrate and drive and not actually rely on things to allow them to drive, because at the end of the day, you have to pass your driving test by maintaining control, and after that you've obviously lost it with reliance on driver's aids. It's not everybody. Most young people are decent drivers, but there's quite a growing majority of people who are very reliant on the technology and not actually how they drive. So that is my proposal to the government, that we actually introduce another driving test, but this time you have to take your driving test at 30 years old and 40 years old, but you have to drive an old car and you have to pass your test in an old car. And believe you me, if you can control an old car, your driving standards will go up massively. So my interest is a far cry from what I do professionally, and I'm very glad of that, because quite frankly, if I was a professional mechanic, um, I think there's a good saying, and I'm pretty sure that there may be a professional mechanic who's watching this at this very moment. I'm pretty sure I'm right in thinking that you have to want to be a mechanic. You have to love what you do. If you don't, you're not going to be very good at it. And because you're working on customer cars all day, sore fingers, bad backs, bleeding this and that, and quite frankly, at the end of the day, you go home and you got a project car on your driveway, which you never get round to, because you're so tired, because you've been working on other people's cars. You don't want to work on your own. So the sad truth is, I don't think in that situation, that would definitely be me. I would definitely lose the interest in cars in my own private life, if I was a professional mechanic. So no, I'm quite pleased about that. I have to say one thing very clear. I'm not egotistic. It's not me, and my channel. But this video, I'm just highlighting where the channel's come from, a little bit about me as a person, and why I'm here and what I'm trying to achieve. And quite frankly, this channel is here as well. It started as a blog 13 months ago, and it was literally a blog for my Mark 1 videos. And I started doing Mark 1 common problems videos, because I know a lot about these cars, and my experience of getting stuck into my car bit by bit, I can now pass down to owners. It wasn't always that way though, because I think I'd owned my Mark 1 for practically 5 or 6 years without any issues. And that's so common to hear, because they're so reliable as cars, it's untrue. I think what is getting a lot of them now is a lack of maintenance and rust, and it's starting to creep on a lot of models, because people have ran these cars on tuppence, literally. But mine was no exception. I had literally ran mine, not into the ground, but getting a bit tired in a lot of areas. And this was around 2019. It had flown pretty much every MOT since I bought it in 2013. There was a couple of MOTs with a few odd advisories here, but nothing much at all. Then 2019, I had a really bad time personally. This was coincided with bad things happening at my work, in my private life, and I had quite a multiple number of issues to deal with. And then the car, my ever reliable Mark 1 Focus, my dependable car, that I solely and was really emotionally clinging, that just continues working for me. That failed the MOT quite in a catastrophe sort of manner. We had rot on the arches, we had rotten springs, we had rotten rear arms, which are very, very common for rotting out if they have not been changed. A multitude, I think we had brake pipe We had a brake pipe issue as well. So the brake pipes that go above the tank, they can rot above the tank where you can't see. That's another thing. And it all needed doing. And the whole cost of repair was over £800. And I was quoted that, and I had to go home and make a decision before saying yes. Because quite frankly, at that moment, I was about to scrap the car. I went away to have a think about it. I spoke to several different people, and most people told me to scrap the thing. And I thought, no, I'm going to pay that and just brunt the cost of this. Financially, I couldn't really take that sort of a hit, but I did. And there was a short period of time where that decision may not have taken place, but I decided to take the brunt and have it done and just pay. That, thankfully, was the last time I paid a mechanic to work on my car, with the exception of tracking and tyres. I thought the work they did was top notch. Brake pipes, done. Arms and new bolts, because the bolts always seize in the bushes, and new springs, and a couple of bits and pieces here that needed doing. They did a good job, but I swore that I was at this stage. I had a Rover P6, a beautiful Rover P6. I bought this car in 2014, a year after my Focus. I always wanted a classic car, and I loved that car to bits. And that car gave me the confidence to start changing things on cars, changing spark plugs, messing with carburetors, tuning a carburetor for a start, tweaking the ignition timing on a distributor where you have to twist and then clamp it in place. That's a difficult task if you don't know what you're doing. Changing points, changing HT leads, changing the oil. Simple stuff, really simple stuff. And that car was so simple enough, it gave me the confidence to apply it with the Focus. And I knew at this stage that, one, I would most probably have to move the Rover on to afford to pay for a rebuild of this car. That was the moment that I decided to rebuild this car piece by piece. And the work the garage had done was great. And it was just the spark that got me thinking, this is exactly what I should be doing now. So I went away and bought probably quite a few £100 worth of tools, including a lovely Halford's advanced toolkit I have sitting right behind me. I would never go anywhere without that. It's a 200-piece set. If you want to know, they are amazing. And then basically I started working on small bits that I know I could manage. So we started replacing a couple of sensors, preventative maintenance more or less. And then we started looking at the underbody. So I made eventually I made some of my own copper lines. I made making my own brake lines, my copper conifer brake lines. I got a couple of tools, and I learned how to make my own brake lines, changing the calipers, the pads, things like that. And believe you me working on brakes would never have happened if it hadn't been for the P6. Again, I did the P6 brakes and they worked. I didn't crash and kill anybody, and that made me think, brilliant, I can work on brakes. Because when you've never worked on brakes, when you've never changed a tyre, you think that something really bad is going to happen. Like, I don't know, you're going to jack the car in the wrong place and it's going to fall on the floor, and you're going to have to call the AA because the car is on the floor. You can't jack it up anymore. You need another jack. It's stupid things like that. You put the new wheel back on and you think, have I tightened these nuts up properly? Am I going to have a wheel fall off? And believe you me, you'll know if your wheel is loose. And then same with brakes. You change the brake pipes or you change the brake pad and you think, is this car going to crash into a fence? My foot's going to go to the floor or something. You've got to know what you're doing. You need to look at other YouTubers. You need to look at research papers. You need to look at manuals. Haynes manuals are brilliant. There's all sorts of places where you can learn to do this, but actually physically doing it, there's no replacement for that. That's the best way of doing it. And then when you successfully do it, you're onto a winner. The confidence you get, the boost you get from that is amazing. And then you want to do more. Obviously, you get to a point where you come to a job a little bit too confident and then you round a bolt or shear a bolt. This is where experience comes into it. And I can now look at a bolt on a car and see if that needs heat, if it needs wire brushing, if it needs penetrating fluid, if it looks like it's something that we shouldn't touch unless we have to. I can look at a bolt and know exactly what I need to do to it to either loosen it or whether we do need to touch it at all, because shearing bolts is not fun. They always say that a 10-minute job on a car can be a 3-hour ordeal with one sheared bolt or rounded bolt. And you do need a few little tools to help you out there. But ideally, you'll have to drill the thing out. And that is not fun. It is noisy. Your neighbours are going to get annoyed and you're going to get annoyed. My job is to hopefully tell people not to do that sort of thing and to prevent that sort of thing from happening. Mistakes happen, but my experience will hopefully show people to watch out for certain things. The biggest one with Mark 1 Focus is the earth point bolts. There are earth points all around the engine bay and they all can potentially snap, because one of mine did, and luckily Ford put plenty of extra holes in, so I just got another bolt and bolted the ground cable to another place. But on other cars, you're not going to be so lucky. You'll have to drill another hole, tap it, thread it, everything. It's not worth it. And then I knew that the Rover had to be moved on. I'd had enough of the car at that stage, and I moved it on at the end of 2019. And it paid for the rest of the restoration, the rebuild of my Mark 1 as it is today. And I'm going to be doing more content coming out. There's lots of content that I have put on the channel. So if you haven't watched this stuff, please watch this stuff, because I've had so many emails from people saying, look, I've had my Focus for such a long time now, or my Rover 45 even. I've had them for such a long time, and I'm sick and tired of paying mechanics. You know, it's really expensive. I'm looking at doing some work, but I don't have the confidence. I don't know where to begin. Well, this is where you begin, this channel. And this video for a start, because this is kind of what I want to install in other people, confidence and encouragement. I'm not a YouTuber, and I will make this very clear to everybody who has recently joined. I am not a generic YouTuber who wants to start a channel in order to create a second income or main income. Firstly, there's very few YouTubers that have got YouTube as a main income, and they are usually people like Johnny Smith, The Late Break Show. He was a presenter on Fifth Gear. He has already got a reputation before he started YouTube. He does not have to work hard for what he does. But then again, he does work really hard, and he is fucking amazing at what he does. And I'd love to meet the guy. There are some amazing YouTubers out there who do some amazing work. And believe you me, I don't think half of them get the credit they do. It's stressful, it's intensive. And in my situation, I have a full-time job. And balancing my social life, my job, my YouTube channel with my content is difficult. And I have never been as busy as what I have been in the last few years. And believe you me, rebuilding a car is busy enough as it is. And that was nothing. That was nothing. This is just touches the surface. But I'm not that sort of YouTuber. And each to their own. Every YouTuber has their own reasons for why they're doing what they're doing. I came into this to give a little bit of advice to Mark 1 Focus owners, because I have so much experience, and I thought I could do this and I can make some really just decent advice videos to show people that it's really not hard and it's really easy when you know how. And there is not much about a Focus Mark 1 that really worries me. They are very simple cars. But a lot of people who are not skilled, who don't have that experience, would look at one and think, where do I begin? And you begin at the basics. Spark plugs, air filter, change the oil. That's where you start from. And then you move onwards from there. Hopefully some of the videos coming out are going to be really helpful. I am doing something on the Mark 1 today. Oh, well, actually not today. It wouldn't be today. What I did was a few days ago now. Continuity and all that. But basically, I've got something that I've got to be doing this weekend. So I'll be filming that, and it'll be quite interesting and very thorough. And that's the way I want to perceive the channel. And this is not a channel where, as it grows, I'm going to be doing sponsorships and I will do shout outs. I do community shout outs for people within the Rover and Ford communities who can help other enthusiasts to keep looking after their cars. People that can give a benefit to people, and not people that are looking to do something because they're getting something out of it. Although my argument is, I don't think anybody does anything in this world without there being a benefit. Of course, my car is, it was just an ordinary Mark 1 Focus 1.6 automatic in Panther Black. Now it's one of the most well-known Focus Mark 1s of all time. Of course, that is a plus point, and I love that because some of my work has been appreciated. But that's okay. But appreciation, I don't want appreciation. I just want to give it back to people. But that is a plus point of the channel. Again, same with Beatrix. I had the same response at the Pride of Longbridge, that this is a really important car because it's shown people exactly just debunking the myth of working on a car. Changing the headlining is something that only you give to professionals. No, I did it for 50 quid with new headlining, and anybody else can do that. Arguably, if you've got a 45 or ZS saloon, you'd have to take the headlining out the back door. That's a bit of a tricky one. I'd recommend taking the seats out so you could get the twist. But anyway, enough of that. So my channel focuses on the actual, no pun intended, on the actual nitty gritty stuff of car ownership and what I can actually help people with in the community. And I do a lot of show stuff. I do a lot of rants. I do a lot of community-based stuff as well, which is going to pick up more and more, but it's just time pending a lot at the moment. And there's a lot of stuff I do off the channel, and I make it my pledge to reply to every single comment on my YouTube channel, my actual personal Facebook page. Some people know who I am. Then I've got a Facebook group of my own, of which people put messages on there. And there's a couple, I've got an email. So all this you can find on the channel page. So there's several ways of contacting me. If you have an issue, you want to talk cars, whatever you want to talk about. And I make it my pledge to reply to every single one of you. The only thing I will say is because of the volume increasing, give me a couple of days. And I do some live streams as well. The live stream I did from my garage seemed to have sucked quite a bit of internet data from my phone. So I suspect one garage live stream a month is definitely on the cards. My live streams are not often and not frequent, mainly because I'm time poor at the moment. I'm money poor and time poor. And that's what cars do to you, unfortunately. They do suck the money before you've got it. And pretty much, anyway, continuing the story of the Focus Mark 1, once I'd finished getting to a point of paintwork and beautification, which we still have, I've got a lot of work to do on that side of things, but it's a running concern. And now she's in a nice, dry garage, considering the weather we've had. I'm really pleased that she is where she is. The Rover, which was bought in October, the Rover 45 Mark II, Project Beatrix, as I've named after the BX registration plate, which is, I suspect, a demonstrator, a dealership registration plate. Quite a few cars at the Pride of Longbridge had a BX registration. It could have been the first owner was basically working at the company. I am actually trying to get in contact with the original owner to see whether there are any more details that I've missed, but I suspect that it was a demonstrator. Anyway, that car needed a heck of a lot of work. It had a head gasket that had blown, not completely, but it had blown. There was oil and coolant mixing, but I suspect it had never been overheated. We had humongous amounts of issues like the headlining gone, the door handles were broken, we had quite a few parts missing from the car and just absolutely broken to pieces. We had an interior that was wet and soggy. We had a leak from the windscreen, which I've sorted, but obviously now the windscreen's going to come out. That's another bloody problem. There was a leak in the boot. There was headlight fading, which they usually do because they're made of shocking plastics. The vents were broken. We had some switch issues at the front. We had some broken wiring. We had to have an engine that was basically rebuilt top to bottom to have it done all properly. We had quite a few different issues, and we had an alarm that kept going off by itself, which is so annoying. It's untrue. And we obviously had the usual Petron suspicious issues, but actually it turns out that there was absolutely nothing wrong with the Petron unit, touchwood. And the Petron modules on the late Mark II 2545s and 75s, I believe, they are very unreliable. The relays are so poor from Petron, from original, that they basically fail. And because it's a body control unit, your immobiliser could get stuck on, your car won't start, your windows won't open, your horn might sound constantly. There are some really weird and embarrassing issues that come from that module. And mine has got all the original relays for the benefit of having this go on me in such a laughable way that you can all have a laugh when it does. And believe you me, I'm prepared for that. But the truth is, after 18 years and they all work and they're all intolerance, resistance wise, maybe I've got some better ones. My main aim was to get that car to the Pride of Longbridge, which we have successfully done. And as the car successfully got to the show, she got lots of attention, lots of praise. I enjoyed catching up with so many amazing people. I've just gone back home thinking, yeah, I'm fully motivated. And then things started going downhill. The car decided to have a strike the day after. We were meant to go to the Whiffle Transport Museum for a ZS, a ZT owners meet, of which unfortunately the car did not want to go that day and decided to blow its big fuse in a rather interesting way. And I haven't discovered what caused that short, but I may do so very soon. But overall, apart from some niggly little issues electrically, touchwood, we are all good. The way the show, I called this a show for the first time ever. That's a first. I'm keeping this on the camera. I'm not editing that out. This channel is aiming in a few directions. There are two marquees that I'm interested in. That is Ford and Rover. I have no interest in other cars, and that is the truth. And that is my niche. And YouTube is brilliant for YouTubers exploring their niche, and I am going to explore both incredibly well indeed. And the way I'm going to do that are two different groups. Interesting enough, for everyone who has a CVT transmission in any MG Rover product, and that could mean quite a few cars because the gearbox was an optional extra on quite a few models, but it is not very well loved. It is actually very, very much disregarded as best avoided by even keen Rover enthusiasts. I actually love the way the gearbox works. I absolutely love it. I love automatics. I prefer automatics as my daily drivers, hence why both the cars are automatics. I like manuals. I have had an ST170 for a brief period, about 5 or 6 years ago now, for about a month or so, and that was a good drive, but I wanted an automatic long term. And I quickly moved it on. They were worth very little back then, but they are worth more now, thankfully. But honestly, I could go on about Mark 1 values all day and why it's worth keeping them on the road. And for all the new subscribers, I will probably end up repeating a lot of what I've said to my old subscribers all over again. But I think it needs to be reiterated. But anyway, for all the CVT transmission vehicles, MG Rover vehicles, which was about a 13-year period starting from the Rover Metro all the way to the later 25 and 45 cars and the MG TF, they all have an option for this gearbox. It was sometimes known as the Steptronic or Step Speed. It was marketed as one or the two for a brief period of time. But basically, these gearboxes, they don't tend to be well loved because people don't really understand how they work and how they should operate. And I think people have put the wrong oil in, not changed the oil. They haven't really serviced them because they do need servicing. They are not automatic gearboxes that can benefit from fluid for life. There is no such thing, I will tell you about that. There is no such thing at all. but there are many areas where the gearboxes maybe have a failure point. The bearings can sometimes go, but then again, that might be down to lack of oil changes. They love oil changes as much as the engine. So that is my first advice if anybody with a CVT is watching this. My second one is I will be long term setting up a CVT register for all MGR vehicles that are currently owned by Rover enthusiasts or any owners that want to join the register because they would like to keep theirs going long term, or they love the car, they enjoy it, and they realise what it is and exactly what it's worth, which to most Rover enthusiasts is absolutely all. But ignoring that, to be honest, that's a bit harsh to say that. I think most Rover enthusiasts would quite like the fact that these cars are being preserved and they are an unusual variant. And at the Pride of Longbridge, there were only 4 representatives of this actual gearbox, and one I didn't even spot, and it was an MGF Steptronic with Steptronic show plate written on it. I don't know how I didn't see that. So that will be quite interesting because there are so few of them left that a register is very appropriate, and I'll be going down that road at some point in the future very soon. And the other side with the Mark 1 Focus, I'm hoping to start a preservation group. A preservation group for owners and enthusiasts, a combination of the two, that want to keep their Mark 1s on the road as long as possible, and to enjoy them and cherish them and drive them. You must drive them. They're not ornaments. They don't deserve to be sitting in garages as show queens. That is not what my channel is about. I don't like show queens. Yes, okay, we all love looking at a museum exhibit, but that's what they are. They're not cars. They're not cars. And to those of you who are actually very new to me as a person, yes, I am quite strong in my opinions, and I will say things that other YouTubers generically don't, because other YouTubers tend to try and please everybody to get the maximum amount of subscribers and views and everything else because they want an income. I am not in this for an income. I have got a first job, a full-time job. Thank you very much. But as I say, that is it is literally my last aim. If anybody wants to give a donation towards the channel, like I think you can have super chats. I don't know how that works, but if anybody does, I will not ask for it. But if you want to give some, I will be eternally appreciative. But that is not a hint for you to start throwing money at me because I don't need it, okay? That is the main picture with who I am and where my channel is going. But the Mark 1 preservation scene, I'm hoping to get a small number of people on board. I hope to have a stand at the NEC next March. That is my main aim. But now I need to meet people at shows and just grow the channel as much as I can using good quality content that is both useful and not very boring, which mine can be sometimes. My earlier stuff was just... There are some details I may have missed out about me as a person, but I'm quite a genuine and honest person. I am no different in real life to how I am behind the camera. And I suspect that might be the case with some people and not others. And I think the YouTubers that have most surprised me and made me feel most welcome are the ones that are exactly the same on camera as they are in real life. And that is who I am. I'm not going to be anybody different. I just have to be careful what I say on here. I may make the odd dirty joke to the right person who I think might enjoy that joke, but on this channel I try and keep things a little bit more generic and a bit more safe. But that doesn't mean that my straight talking attitude is going to be withered. So to conclude this little welcome to all the new people that have joined the channel, and a thank you to all my subscribers who've been with me, some of which since the start and who have tolerated me for such a long time, I'm going to leave you with this one last rant. Look at this piece of what is it? It's just, honestly, Jaguar Land Rover. I've absolutely lost the plot. That is the newly to be released battery electric Range Rover, which is coming out later this year, and it looks just, look at those wheels. Why do you need 21-inch wheels for? I mean, who are you trying to impress? I mean, literally, I mean, these vehicles, and I'm not being funny. I'm not being funny here. A lot of these vehicles are advertised as child-friendly vehicles. I was actually talking to Darren, who knows who he is, at the Pride of Longbridge, and he hit the nail on the head when he said a lot of these CVs are so tall that children cannot reach the back door handles because they're so high. How is that child friendly? These cars are absolutely hideous. These have got recessed door handles by the look of it. It's just nasty. I mean, they've even blanked out the front of the car so it looks even more plain and boring than the petrol and diesel versions. And now we don't have door mirrors. We have to have cameras now. So if those cameras pack up, think of the cost of those cameras alone. It write the car off. It's just so unnecessary. It is untrue. The unnecessariness of modern cars is, for me, why I just don't like them. I mean, this is most laughable thing, actually, this quote. Basically, JLR's vehicle program director said it would deliver true Range Rover values, including off-road ability, usability, and refinement in an uncompromised approach. What do you mean, deliver true Range Rover values? Do you mean breaking down at the side of the road and basically having to beg the AA man to get a bigger truck because your Range Rover is too wide for the truck? I mean, I heard that in the back end of 2024, JLR are going to rebrand the company. I mean, how laughable is that? You don't need to rebrand. You just need to make your cars more reliable. And also on the technology front of things, like I've said before about driver aids and distractions and how they have absolutely gone so over the top that now people are just not as good a drivers as they used to be because of all this technology. I mean, this has to take the biscuit. Now, this is the actual infotainment touchscreen in the current ID7. Now, there's a new ID3 and new ID7 that are going to come out, and they're both essentially replacing, in the long term, the Golf and the Polo. And quite frankly, the interior space in them is no less than a Polo that it replaces, which is just stupid. But this is the kind of infotainment screen that people have become used to over the years. It's quite Spartan in terms of buttons. They're trying to get rid of physical buttons and make it a little bit more streamlined. It was better than it used to be, but still, let's just not have screens as big as that, please. Oh dearie me. Yeah, that is basically going to be the biggest screen that you can have on a new ID3 or ID7. And apparently it comes with customizable short cut buttons instead of actual physical buttons on the screen. Apparently you can customize them and everything. Absolutely amazing. Biggest problem though, look at the size of the thing. I mean, okay, the top of the dashboard is quite high, but if they're continuing to make the screens that big, why don't we just, tell you what, why don't we just get rid of the windscreen and just replace it with one big camera that shows you what's in front of you? Why don't we do that? Because if the camera actually goes on the blink and you go and crash into the back of somebody, you can say, I'm sorry, that's not my fault, the camera went off. Absolutely crackers. It's just, everything is getting excessively huge, excessively expensive to go with that hugeness. And does anybody ask why? Or is it just car enthusiasts are the ones that have got their brains cued in to what's going on in the new car world? I'm very proud and privileged to actually look at new cars and think they could just be so much better, so much simpler. And that does not compromise reliability. Cars are now less reliable than they were 15 years ago. And that's the sort of progress that we've seen in the car world. Cheapness, and selling to everybody who wants to basically outdo the next door neighbour. Literally keeping up with the Joneses. And with that note, take care guys, I will see you very soon.